morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a nice sunny morning in Laverne. I'm Galen Beery, the current president of the Historical Society of Laverne, and a group that we call SOLVE, Save Old Laverne's Environment. Today we're going to do a little tour down the city street known as 3rd Street, which was once the main street of Laverne. And we're going to show you some of the beautiful architecture which caused the City Council to rezone this street back to R1 and thus preserve many of the beautiful homes here. This is a rather charming 1906 house built for Noah and Mary Neer, who moved here from Kansas with 6 daughters. In 1909, 3 of their daughters were married in the living room. When the father of the family died, the house passed into the hands of his daughter, Clara Vanaman, who lived here until her death in the 1970s. Now, this house ran down substantially, and it was owned by several different owners, and eventually was scheduled to be bulldozed. One of the owners and his wife were very adamant that it had to be restored to its former glory. The wife actually sat on the living room in the porch and dared the bulldozers to blow it down, and it was never bulldozed. They did get it up to code, and since then it's become one of the most beautiful homes in Laverne. The current owners are Bill and Charlotte Neal. They have completed the renovation of the house, and they have placed on a rather large porch running around the side of the house. Of particular note is this Victorian Gazebo to one side, and the step to the gazebo was pulled into its location. It originally sat right down here next to the alley and was pulled over, and the gazebo was built. The step itself was so that people could step on it when they climbed into buggies. This house, one of the most beautiful in Laverne, was so nice that Karen and Rex Higgins were inspired to buy it and restore it. It was built in 1907 by David Blickenstaff of the founding Blickenstaff family of Laverne, and features, among other things, around 50 windows to let in the beautiful California sun. It's known as California Bungalow, and it has these extending timbers, a lot of shingles, and this beautiful stone fireplace and stone elephantine pillars. They're called elephantine because they slope out at the bottom like the feet of elephants. In 1924, another family came to Laverne from Virden, Illinois. They involved Jonas and Pearl Vanaman Bowman. And after 3 years of renting their own homes, they decided it was time to build one for themselves. So they built this absolutely beautiful little rock home. Now, this was 1927, and a lot of the boards in the house, the rafters in particular, and the roof, came from the old Lordsburg Hotel, which was being torn down at the site. Also, there's a little balustrade that's just up the little stairway that goes up to the attic, and that also came from the old Lordsburg Hotel. This functional craftsman bungalow was built in 1911 by a carpenter, William Muma, for his parents, brothers, and sisters. He just married, so he built another house, and he and his wife moved into it. But when the rest of the family moved up to McFarland, California, Will Muma came back with his bride, and they lived here for 49 years. One of his daughters, Maureen, was born in 1915. After they'd been here a number of years, they decided the house was in the wrong location, and just to the west of the house there was a vacant lot. So he and his friend on the other side bought the vacant lot. They wanted nothing to come between them. They divided the vacant lot in half, and he jacked up the complete house and moved it 30 feet to the west and then set it down on a new cellar. His daughter was able to stand in the living room and look out the window as the teams of horses moved the house west, and she could watch the ground moving away from under the house. She later, after he laid concrete, left the prints of her hands and feet in the concrete. This attractive home was built in 1922 by a retired farmer from Canada. He died several years later, and it came into the hands of a family, which I find notable because there are 4 generations, that's mother, daughter, granddaughter, and great-granddaughter, who have owned and occupied the house to the present day. The house itself is a modified craftsman. It has a hip roof, or Dutch gable, which is where the roof has been kind of truncated at the end. And there's another house very similar to this up on 6th Street. The people who built these houses often passed the plans around, and they would build 2 or 3 homes using the same set of plans. When we went into the basement of this several years ago, I found it fascinating because when you have 4 generations of women living in the same house, it seems like nobody ever threw anything away. And we could find train sets, photograph albums of the 1890s, and all sorts of debris and interesting paraphernalia from 4 generations of the same family. Now this house has become familiar to generations of school children as a house that was built in one day. Now, it wasn't actually one day, but it was 2 weekends, which if you add them together made one day. The man who was supervising the building of the big orange packing houses down at the airport, at the railroad here, needed a place to put his family. And from the 2 newspaper stories which we have on this, apparently he brought a crew down and they poured the foundations one weekend. The next weekend, he had about 25 carpenters show up, and they started building. And they put in the floors, they put in the joists, the beams, the studs, and they put on the roof. They worked all day, they worked all night, and early the next Sunday morning, they kept on their carpenter's uniforms, and they all went to the 8 different churches around Laverne at that time. As they left, they closed and locked the door, which had not been there the day before. Thus, it was known as the house that was built in one day. Laverne, in addition to groups of citizens, owes a lot to individual citizens, and probably no one more than a man by the name of Scooby Mills, to whom we owe these beautiful Cedrus deodora trees planted along 3rd Street. Scooby was at the post office one day when a man came in and said, "I'm supposed to plant these trees down 3rd Street, and I don't have any money to pay the freight charges. You'll get paid back, but I just do need the $25 to get the trees." Well, the postmaster didn't want to loan the money to him, so what Scooby did was he went to the bank and he signed a note for $25. Now this doesn't sound like much, but Scooby got the $25 and he gave it to the man who was to plant the trees, who got the trees and came and planted them up and down the length of 3rd Street. Scooby never did get his $25 back. He only made $40 a month. To the end of his life, could sometimes be seen walking up and down 3rd Street here saying, "You like these trees? They're all mine. I paid for them." And thus it was that in 1988, the city of Laverne placed in a plaque in his honor since he had taken care of these trees. We at the Historical Society and Save Old Laverne's Environment appreciate the opportunity to present this to you. We love Laverne with its beautiful little homes, and we want to extend our appreciation to the people that buy these homes and fix them up. We hope that you enjoy Laverne as much as we do.